My Little Universe, written by equestrian Kieran, Geode guessed Lapis and Steven's time in Equestria had been a rather eventful one. Since they showed up, the events that happened in Ponyville had been all the rage, not to mention their involvement with Awitsodal some time back. While that was a bit unexpected, the gem duo felt a bit glad for sticking around the place for as long as they've been doing. Still, even so, there's still the wonder on how to get back home. Steven didn't have his key with him, and as far as he's concerned, that's their only way to get back. Sure, Discord could just pop back with them, if they knew where he was, that is. Lapis did tell him about her encounter with him, yes, but knowing his current whereabouts meant that past information from that far off won't entirely help. As for the crystal gems back in their world, the three were a bit unsure on their new keys they had gotten. Each key had a smiling face of their own on it, one for amethyst, one for pearl, and one for garnet. They pretty much matched Steven's own key, but the group didn't have a clue on how they worked. The paper that Steven had didn't get to everyone else, so how to activate them was, to put it bluntly, unknown. Well, they had to figure something out, otherwise Steven and Lapis are gone for good. When it came to information, though, Twilight took it to heart and hoof. She'd wanted to figure out a bit more on these gems since first meeting them, and there's no better time than the present, especially when that present had the exact creatures right at her doorstep. So, one afternoon, Twilight was with Lapis and Steven by one of Ponyville's bridges, going over the large river flowing through town. With her, Twilight had a notepad and quill to take on some notes, as Lapis gave her some information about gems. It wasn't something Lapis would normally just talk on about, but she let her because it was about gems in general, rather than anything too personal. Steven was learning alongside her, enjoying the new information. Yeah, gems don't need to eat anything to live, Lapis said at one point, Twilight noting it down. She already got a ton of other info she thought was pretty interesting, aka almost all of it. After Twilight was finished with that part, the alicorn looked over to her. Thank you very much, Lapis, Twilight complimented, setting her notes on the rim of the bridge. I'm glad I can help you, Twilight, replied Lapis. Lapis Lazuli looked over to the water along the river under them. While she did, another question came across Twilight's mind. Hey Steven? You are a full gem, aren't you? Well, half gem, on my mom's side, Steven said, showing Twilight his gem on his stomach. Before Twilight could continue though, suddenly the three had another visitor that suddenly appeared by them. In a quick blur of pink, one pony quickly ended up by them. After getting a better view, it turned out to be Pinky. Twilight, Steven, Lapis, there you are. You won't believe what's going on, Pinky said. What's wrong? Twilight asked, a little bit worried over Pinky's reaction. Something bad happened, added Lapis. Steven suddenly pulled out something from his pocket and showed it to the two. What it was, exactly, was a poster of what seemed to be furniture, used furniture. There's a sale of used furniture today. The sense of worry was quickly replaced soon after that. Lapis looked at the poster in confusion while Twilight calmed down. Lapis was aware of these so-called sales, but why will any pony buy used furniture, especially if the stuff itself looked like it was wrecked? As for Steven, it was pretty good to hear it, as he looked over the furniture on the poster with a smile. Is that all? Pinky piped. Oh, that and a magic mystery door popped up over in the market, but that's it, Pinky said, a bit calmer that time. What? All three gasped. That was information worth being surprised over, shocked enough for them to ditch the poster, and immediately rushed off to see what she was talking about. Pinky was stuck in a spin, they went off so fast. Pinky took back the poster and bolted off after them. The marketplace was the main source of attention by the time Lapis, Twilight, Steven and Pinky got to the marketplace. A group of ponies were already taking notice of the object she was talking about. In the middle of the market, a lone door, much taller than normal, was perfectly standing up on end. Nothing too special was about the door, looking like a regular light blue door, but nothing seemed to be supporting the thing as the other ponies looked it over. Steven, Lapis, and Twilight went over to the door, as Pinky galloped off to get the rest of her friends. Nobody had remembered putting up any new door, in the middle of the market no less. Cool, Steven said, rushing over to the door, giving it a 360 look over. It wasn't nailed to the ground, propped up, or even fake. It was a real door, both sides looking exactly the same. How'd this get here? Twilight wondered. Isn't this normal for Equestria? Well, no, but it isn't the weirdest thing magic does. Trust me, Twilight said, remembering her own experiences with her magical mishaps. Still, even with that information, the mystery door was still something of a curiosity, as Lapis and Twilight looked it over along with Steven. While hovering just off the ground, Lapis had her hand to her chin, thinking it over more and more. Soon, she had the nerve to give a knock on the door. At first, nothing seemed to happen, but suddenly, the door began to slide open. The three stepped back as it did so, revealing a sort of white plane, a bit too bright to exactly see what was in there. Not blinding, but enough so they couldn't see what was on the other side. Before they could end up doing anything, the door was gone, and they saw the entire opening come through. After a little bit, three silhouettes began to show itself from the other side, walking towards them. At first, it was hard to tell. But, suddenly, one of them saw Steven. "Steven!" A familiar voice rang out, as she rushed out, and hugged Steven. "Pearl! You're here!" Steven realized, being lifted up by Pearl. Soon, as surprising as it was, the other crystal gems soon showed up alongside her. "Hey, dude, sup?" Amethyst said. "Pearl? Amethyst, Garnet. How are you three here?" Twilight gasped. Garnet then pulled out what had got them there in the first place, her own magic key. "This got us here. Here's your Steven," Garnet said, getting out Steven's own key, and dropping it to Steven's hand. Then their attention turned to Lapis. The blue gem was a ways away, as both sides stared at each other, unsure of what to really say. One side was a bit wary of her for being freed from the mirror, while the other was mad at them for not doing anything to help her in the first place. However, while both sides had their reasons, one similar force contradicted their own thoughts on each other. One was told to be more trusting, while the other was told not to jump to things. Still, that didn't help the overall feel of the situation, really. "Hi," Lapis finally said after what felt like forever. "Hello," replied Garnet. You are Garnet? Steven told me a bit about you." "Right. See, you both are doing well." The awkwardness is overwhelming to deal with for Lapis and Garnet, even though Garnet didn't try to show it. "Okay then. So, I guess you're here to get Steven." That time, Garnet didn't reply, looking around at the place for a bit. The place seemed very different from where they were, many more colors, a bit calmer, more magical activity being sensed as well by the gem. All that combined together to form a new feeling within her. Soon, Garnet sighed and looked back to Lapis. "And you are? Oh, Lapis. Well, thanks for being Steven's friend," Garnet said with a smile. Lapis did not expect to hear that come out of Garnet, of all gems. Still, Lapis smiled, and gave a nod to Garnet, as the tall gem turned to Amethyst, Steven, and Pearl. "Garnet, shall we head back to our world?" Pearl asked, now having Steven safely with them. "So soon? But you all just got here," Steven said. "Steven, you've been gone for over a week now. And we've been here for a minute. Come on, can't hurt to look around, can it?" Amethyst said, out of the blue. Amethyst was also a bit curious about this place. However, Pearl was more focused on getting Steven back home than to look around. Before Pearl could say anything though, Garnet went over to them, leaving Lapis alone for the moment. Garnet then turned to Twilight, which she towered over like every pony around her. Garnet kneeled down so she was more to her level. "Hello again, Twilight." "Hi Garnet. So, are you three going to be on your way?" Twilight asked. "Actually, mind giving a tour to my friends?" Garnet asked, Pearl taken a bit off guard by the decision. Twilight nodded happily. Garnet, are you dash? It'll be okay. You have your key, you can return without my help. Besides, I have something to check on, Garnet said, beginning to walk back through the portal. "You sure, Garnet?" Pearl asked. Garnet turned back to Pearl. "I'm sure. See you in a bit." After that, the gem went back through the portal herself, and soon after she did, the portal and door disappeared. Now, Amethyst and Pearl both were in the same world Steven and Lapis were in. Still, Twilight turned to them after Garnet left. "So, I guess you two will be staying for a while?" Twilight asked. Pearl sighed. "Seems so. Well, okay then. If you follow me, I can happily show you around." "All right. Time to see what we've been missing," Amethyst said with joy. Steven gave his own tour back in Beach City. Now it was Twilight's turn to play tour guide. As Amethyst and Pearl were going about back in Ponyville, Garnet had returned back to her own world. Turned out, the door they tried the keys on was at the front door, as the glowing stopped soon after Garnet went through it. Garnet held onto her key and was already stepping onto the warp pad to the back and teleporting herself away. Seconds later, she was at her destination. Not entirely at its best, and not what Garnet expected. Looking out, Garnet was along the edge of a gigantic crater, the ground appearing like blocks curved to make a rounded impact wound in the earth. The clouds, darker than normal, were even rounded out for the object at its center, circling it. The object at the center looked like a ginormous black orb-like object at the center. It was mostly black, like charcoal, yet some hint of red and blue were smeared along the surface from Garnet's point of view. One thing she also saw that worried her was a large, cyan-blue crack along its surface on the ground. Oh no, Garnet sighed, a few large strides all it taking to get there. The crack was fairly slim, but rather tall already. The evidence of what effects it was causing was already shown around her, the amount of storm clouds surrounding the large object, and a few spare lightning bolts being spewed out time and time again. Garnet can even hear the potential storm inside the geode itself. For one thing, how'd the geode crack open? Garnet felt the side of the giant geode, able to feel the storm looming from within it. The storm's more active than normal in there. Have to seal it up, Garnet told herself, trying to think on what exactly to do. It didn't appear to be any more damaged, but it was probably a good idea to handle the geode as soon as possible. As Garnet went over to the crack, something else seemed to catch her attention. Garnet could see just a small glimpse of something bolting around inside, but with the lightning shooting out, Garnet couldn't tell that much on what was going on. Suddenly, while smaller lightning bolts got out, one huge one suddenly shot out past Garnet, missing her by inches. Garnet took a step back, but she didn't fall over, as she watched the huge bolt rush out. Unlike normal lightning, this one moved a bit differently. Lightning rushes out within close to light speed, and far more erratic with aim. This one was fast, sure, but it wasn't as erratic, and more in one direction until it slowed down. It actually looked like it was a bit dizzy, spinning around until it got correct on its feet. It was no lightning bolt. It appeared to be a girl, looking slender much like Pearl was. Her yellow hair went down her back, with a blue and orange lightning bolt highlight within it. She also had bright orange eyes, though looked like they were spinning for the moment, being dizzy, and her skin was a sandy yellow. She also had on a yellow, long-sleeved crop top, accents matching the highlights in her hair, and blue electric shorts. On her feet were a set of yellow boots with lightning bolt designs on them. On her knees, though, were two lightning bolt-shaped gemstones. Garnet knew about the geode for a while, but she didn't see that coming. As the other gem tried to get herself out of her dizzy spell, her eyes walleyed for a little bit until she shook her head and got her eyes straight. "You do this," Garnet said firmly, after regaining her composure. Upon hearing the voice, the gem spun around to see her. Standing up straight, she appeared just a bit taller than Pearl, but not as tall as Garnet. "Bye-bye," she said quickly, before suddenly running off. She ran off extremely fast, too quick for Garnet to fully realize it. "Hey, wait," Garnet called. However, the gem was already gone from her sight. Garnet took another look at the cracked geode. Should she deal with the geode, or the new gem that rushed out? Either way, she had to handle them at one point. Back in Equestria, Pearl and Amethyst were given a good tour of Ponyville, with Lapis, Steven, and Twilight leading them on. At the point, the two were going through town square. Other ponies around the place watched the new gems go around the place. Pearl and Amethyst were just enjoying the colorful world of multicolored ponies. "So, this is Ponyville you were talking about?" Amethyst asked, quoting Ponyville with her fingers. The idea it was called Ponyville still sounded a bit silly to her, despite knowing the reason why by looking around at all the Earth ponies. That's right, this town had been here for generations, growing a little bit more as time went by, and more ponies settled down here, Twilight explained. "Where's the horns and wings? Didn't your other pony pals have those?" "Oh, well, you see, this town was founded by Earth ponies. The other main races settled down afterwards, so it's mostly Earth ponies," Twilight said, directing their attention to the number of Earth ponies around. They did notice the lack of horns and wings, like Twilight had on her. Before they could continue, suddenly another blur of pink rushed by, the time landing at Pearl. The two tumbled, but eventually Pearl looked and saw Pinkie Pie's happy grin. Amethyst couldn't help but laugh at that. Unlike before though, another pony showed up, the Rainbow Mane easily idolizing her. She also had a rolled-up poster on her back. "Hey Pearl, Amethyst. You two are here after all," Rainbow Dash said as she flew in midair above them. Amethyst went over and gave her a good brohoof. Pinkie got off a bit quicker that time as Pearl got up and whipped off the dust from her clothes. "A pleasure to see you, Rainbow, Pinkie." "Great to see ya, Rainbow, how's it hanging?" Amethyst asked. The Pegasus then quickly got out the rolled-up bit of paper off her back. The poster showed an area of Ponyville, and it details something about tryouts for equestrian games. Equestrian games? What's that? Only the best, greatest, most awesome event in all of Equestria. Ponies come from miles around to compete in teeth-grinding competitions, and yours truly is going to represent Ponyville for the games, Rainbow announced, a smile on her face, full of pride. Immediately, the gems seemed to really be interested in the equestrian games, Amethyst especially. A pure event where ponies from all over go to, with competitions only the best can do? That's for her. Steven was also pretty excited, though Lapis and Pearl were more curious on this event than excited. You serious? Steven asked, excitedly. You bet I am, and me and my team are coming home winners. What do the ponies do in these games? Sounds very important, Lapis wondered. There's air relay, ice archery, the iron ball toss, 20 miles dash, barrel racing, lots of stuff. Leave it to the athlete pony to know many of the events going on for the equestrian games. Steven and Amethyst looked to Pearl, big smile, and hopeful eyes. Pearl knew what they wanted, and looked over the poster and when the games will start, thinking it over. Well, let me talk to Garnet about it, Pearl concluded. Steven and Amethyst secretly wished Garnet would agree to it, as Pearl gave the poster to Lapis. Well, wish I could chat guys, but I got to get my team ready, tryouts are next week. Later, with a quick salute, the Rainbow Pegasus flew off to get her team ready to go. Amethyst was happy to keep the poster with her, immediately hooked by the events, as the tour continued on from there. Twilight didn't intend on bringing the equestrian games into the tour, but it was a nice surplus. Back in Steven's universe, Garnet had decided to keep looking for that speedy gem that appeared. Sure, she could focus more on the Geode, but that doesn't get up and run away. Who knew where the gem could end up by now? Considering how fast she went, it could easily end up miles off from where she was. The barren land away from the crater seemed completely lacking anything, aside from a few rocks. She could sense that someone was around, somewhere. I know you're around here, I can sense you. No response. Garnet felt that she was either purposely responsible or saw her as a threat, or both. Either way, she wondered how she ended up in the Geode in the first place, knowing there's a deadly storm inside of it. Eventually, the gem stopped moving in the middle of the barren land, looking around. Some reason, she kept hearing discord in her head as she looked for the other gem around the area, especially when he kept saying they don't care about other gems. She does care. If you come out, I won't hurt you, I promise, Garnet called. Seconds later, the same gem suddenly appeared in front of her, though not standing close enough for Garnet to touch her. You're not here to hurt me. No, I only came to check on the Geode. Who might you be? Name's fooled you right. And you are, Garnet. Do you know anything about the Geode state? Garnet asked, pointing back to the Geode. Fulgurite herself looked guilty of something, though didn't exactly say on what it was. Still, the look on her face said it all. Fulgurite, hey, I was locked up in there for 4,000 years, can you blame me if I wanted to get out? Fulgurite said, though flinched as Garnet moved over to her. Okay, calm down. Look, all I want right now is to seal the Geode up before the storm escapes. You managed to open it, do you know how to seal it? Garnet asked. Fulgurite needed a bit to regain her composure. So, you're not going to hurt me? No. Fulgurite gave a sigh of relief and smiled towards Garnet. Great. Well, let's have a look-see, Fulgurite said, heading off back to the Geode in a sort of jog rather than a walk-talk about a quick change of heart, but she seemed to be fast in everything, far as Garnet's concerned. All Garnet did was follow Fulgurite as they went back to the Geode. Back in Ponyville, the tour continued on throughout the while. It was a bit of a bother that they didn't see much of the main six, apart from Pinkie, Rainbow, and Twilight, but it didn't dull out from the tour altogether. In fact, the next stop on their tour was to one of the main six houses, the Ponyville Boutique. The boutique itself looked pretty marvelous compared to the other cottages of Ponyville, which caught Pearl's eye right away. When the group went on in, the room within the boutique was also highly maintained, with a number of pony clothes and designers' fashions along pony mannequins. The number of designs were pretty good overall, nice colors, patterns, and designs overall. Still, Amethyst was a bit unsure of the place, being a tomboy type and all that. Nearby, there was a platform with 3 different mirrors surrounding it, a dresser's platform no doubt. Over there, Rarity was happily working on her latest fashion, nearby a sewing kit with her red seeing glasses for extra detail. She was currently working on a new design by the time the group walked in. The unicorn stopped the sewing for that SEC, to see Amethyst and Pearl come in. Oh, Pearl, Amethyst. Sorry I couldn't make it to greet you right away, Rarity said. It's no issue, Rarity, really, Pearl replied. However, her focus quickly turned to the fabric Rarity was working with. What are you doing? I'm working on my latest designer's masterpiece. You gems had given me so much inspiration, I just had to work it into my latest design, Rarity explained, continuing sewing the fabric in front of her hooves. It took only a little bit before the fabric was ready, and the unicorn levitated the finished dress piece to the mannequin nearby. The exact design had a lovely pattern of the gemstones, not real gemstones. Along the rim looked like a row of shining blue pearls, with the stripes of deep blue and purple along the flank. The dress flowed down the back legs, with the neck laced with a lavender hue. It also included a tiara headpiece, with some elegant feathers along it. The group looked over the dress. Even if it was designed for ponies, they could see where she put the idea for the gems in it, pearl mostly. Wow, Rarity, that's impressive. A very fine attention to detail, Pearl said, looking it over. However, Rarity was thinking it over, looking over Pearl for a little bit until she got an idea. Pearl, you have to model for me, Rarity said, feeling a lot of inspiration coming to her. Pearl didn't expect to hear that right away. Wah, model, yes, dear. It's the least I can do. Oh, well, if you need some pony a model, then may I suggest Twilight perhaps, Pearl offered. The idea that these ponies go by some pony rather than somebody was still new to her, and Rarity shook her head. I insist, you are perfect for a model. Please, it'll only take a minute, Rarity insisted. She needed someone to model, and since this dress was inspired by the gems, it was only reasonable for a gem to model it for her anyway. Pearl didn't know what a model is, let alone what to exactly do. However, looking at the dress itself next to her, well, I suppose it couldn't hurt. What do I need to do? Pearl asked. Rarity guided Pearl over to the platform by the mirrors, taking out some measurement tape to get started. Just stand still, dear, I need to take some measurements, Rarity said, starting to work out Pearl's height from her shoulders down. The measurement tapes. Pearl stood perfectly still as Rarity got the measurements and went to work. That minute turned to nearly half an hour as Rarity worked on the design for Pearl. Every pony thought it was going to be the same dress Rarity had just made. However, this design was a bit different upon the revelation afterwards. What they thought was the dress Rarity had just made actually appeared to be something entirely new. The dress was flowing down, only showing her feet, but the dress was snow white. It didn't have any sleeves, and was outlived with a lovely pink rim, stripped about 3 times with lighter colors. The neck was laced with a pink fishnet ballet made of silk. It was simple, yet beautiful on her. Lapis, Steven, Twilight, Pinky and even Amethyst were impressed with how Pearl looked. Pearl looked to the 3 mirrors to see herself, unsure of what to say. Both hands cover her mouth in surprise, though a smile did form on her face, eyes wide. What do you think? Rarity asked. Pearl still didn't reply, just looking at the clothes she was wearing. I'm speechless. Can I keep this? Pearl asked. Sure, by all means, darling, Rarity said. Seemed they were doing well here, but Amethyst had already booked it after 10 minutes, waiting outside until Pearl was done. When the others finally went outside, Pearl had a box with her outfit, courtesy of Rarity herself. This was their own little trinket on their tour, and Pearl was glad she had gotten hers. Back at the Geode, Garnet and Fulgurite were back at the problem at hand, the crack in the Geode itself. Garnet waited alongside as Fulgurite went to work, looking it over as best she could. The idea for letting a completely new gem help her out was a bit sketchy, but 1, she didn't know how to close it, and Fulgurite got herself out, and 2, she wanted to prove that she does care about other gems rather than leave them alone. She shown it to Lapis, now it came to Fulgurite. The yellow gem looked over the crack a bit, some of the lightning bolts still shooting out of the crack in the dome-like rock. Some of the lightning bolts flew around rather violently before disappearing after a few seconds, but that didn't deter Fulgurite as she looked it over as best she could. You need any help? Garnet asked, trying to be polite with her. Nah, I got it. Now let's see. Suddenly, Fulgurite was struck by one of the lightning bolts, but, rather than show pain, she showed a sudden adrenaline spike as the electrical hit surged through her for a few seconds. Her hair stuck up for a little bit, the lightning actually went through her hair, it standing on end for a little bit as the lightning shot out from the back. Her hair went back down after the lightning left, though looked a little bit fluffier than before. Garnet took a step back, not wanting to get electrocuted herself, not from pain, from annoyance. Got it, Fulgurite suddenly said. Fulgurite then proceeded to turn backwards to the crack. Garnet was unsure what Fulgurite was going to do. Her hair suddenly began to move on its own, under Fulgurite's control, until it covered up the whole crack with her hair. No blow came from the crack, but Garnet could tell that the lightning was still going about the place. At one point, the lightning struck the hair blocking the hole, giving off an electrified lightning effect to Fulgurite's whole body. Hoo ho 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 ho! Fulgurite screamed, feeling the energy flowing through her body as crazy flashing went off her body and hair. Garnet watched as the event occurred. Suddenly, Fulgurite ended up splitting her hair off to the crack. The hair itself ended up sealing to the crack completely, and the hair on her hair turned back to normal, as if she didn't lose any hair to begin with. Still, Fulgurite ended up running in circles, working off some of the energy in her from the lightning strike. Garnet was indeed impressed from the final result, the crack completely sealed up by Fulgurite's hair. "You can thank me later," Fulgurite said with a big smile, trying to relax from the electric charge. Fulgurite gave Garnet a high five, the spare electricity going into Garnet. The gem didn't react too much but did get the goosebumps from the sudden charge. Still, the objective was done, even with another gem's help like Fulgurite. "Thank you," Garnet said, starting to walk over to the warp pad. However, as she got there, Fulgurite suddenly rushed over at the warp pad itself, standing next to her. She moved too quick for Garnet to catch right away, her movement more of a blur. She stood next to Garnet, a big smile on her face. Garnet wasn't sure on this point. "Let me guess." Fulgurite nodded quickly, still having her smile. Garnet kept quiet for a bit, in deep thought on the matter, but eventually nodded herself. Fulgurite hopped in place, the energy and happiness overflowing as heck, as Garnet activated the warp pad. It was the least Garnet could do anyway for sealing up the geode for her. Soon, the two were back in the beach house, Fulgurite immediately making herself comfortable as she hopped over onto the couch, bouncing for a bit until she laid down nice and easy. "Nice place you got here," Fulgurite said, looking around the place. Garnet walked over and sat down as Fulgurite looked around the place, checking out the kitchen and Steven's bedroom. Soon, the gem saw a picture of someone above the outside screen door, looking like a motherly figure. She looked rather elegant, sweet, and just had a sort of leader mother sort of look to her. Fulgurite looked over to her, thinking over on who it was. "Who's that there? Looks familiar. What was it? Riz? Rise? Ruse? Rose?" Garnet corrected. "Yeah, that's it. You know Rose." That's when Garnet grew a little quiet. This gem knew Rose? Before it could go any further, suddenly the door by the picture turned up all white as it opened up. Soon, Pearl, Amethyst, Steven and Lapis too went through the portal back from Equestria to the beach house. "We're back, Garnet. How did your work go?" Pearl asked, setting the box down on the counter. Before they said anything, Fulgurite got their attention rather quickly, sitting in plain sight in Steven's bedroom, just above the couch. She was laying down, her hair flowing over the edge. Immediately Steven went over to them. "Who's this?" Steven asked. Garnet just roughly sighed. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video make sure to like and leave a comment and share it with a friend. See you all later.